When thinking about the social issues that plague Americans, LGBT issues are normally some of the first to be thought of. Specifically, gay marriage has been something that has been a point of contention in this upcoming presidential election, the past 5 presidential elections, and an issue that people under the LGBT spectrum are faced to force every day. In 2013, gay marriage was legalized nationwide, but it was a long struggle to get there. Since 1991, there have been many attempts to promote and discourage same-sex marriage and equal treatment of all individuals falling under the LGBT spectrum. The fight was an ongoing struggle that mainly came to public manifestation during the 1980s, when HIV/AIDS was declared a national epidemic and truly brought gays to the front line of what was going on. However, the start of the LGBT people having any kind of face in society stemmed from the 1950s, when organizations like the Mattachine Society and the Daughters of Bilitis came to formation in Los Angeles and San Francisco. 60 years later, under the presidency of Barack Obama, gay marriage has been legalized in all 50 states. How that came to fruition, however, was not an easy road. The first legal contest toward the gay marriage legalization came from the case of Bear versus Mike, which is formerly known as Bear versus Lewin, and this happened in 1993. 3 couples in Hawaii, one of which was Nina Bear and Janora Dancel, were denied a marriage application license just because they were gay. Both of these women were appalled by this, and all 3 couples had sued the Hawaii Supreme Court on the appeal of discrimination. The Hawaii Supreme Court basically says that the state can only deny a marriage license application, or a license at all, if there's an actual reason that they don't want people to get married, and you cannot use gender as a basis of this. But during this whole thing, the National Congress was stressed out because they did not want gay marriage to be legalized anywhere within the United States. Knowing that Hawaii was on the path to probably legalizing it, they needed to act fast to stop this from happening and to render Bear's point moot. To do this, Congress made DOMA. DOMA, which is ironically called the Defense of the Marriage Act of 1996, is based off of America's full faith and credit clause. DOMA discusses the rights in which the state, territories, and possessions of the United States can or cannot recognize gay marriage. DOMA decided that the federal government would not recognize any lesbian or gay marriages for federal funding or any matter, even if the marriage was legal within the state the person resides. Congress's vote for this was an astounding 85 yes to 14 no in the Senate, and 342 to 67 in the House, which shows with this whopping majority and a huge swing toward yes, it was easily put into action. After DOMA was signed into action in 1996, the next jump was a proposition made in California known as Prop 8. Because over the past few years, there was nothing anybody could do but kind of sit, as DOMA was a federal encompass, but meant states could have their own individual laws about what they wanted to do in terms of gay unions. For example, in Vermont in 2004, they were offering gay marriage unions, not actual marriage licenses, so they could have gay people marry who they want, but without the term marriage. However, in California, Prop 8 came to formation on November 4th, 2008, and it basically said that gay marriage was completely illegalized in California. This turned into a huge fight, as not only is California one of the biggest states in the nation, but it's also home to San Francisco, which is one of the most LGBT-friendly communities in the entire nation. However, 2013 was quite a year for the LGBT community. 5 years after all of these acts had been passed, DOMA and Prop 8 were victoriously struck down. On June 23rd, 2013, the Supreme Court voted in a stand of 5-4 that both were unconstitutional. Both of these decisions addressed separate issues, and there was no declaration of any national same-sex marriage legalization, but both overall helped take the stand that gay marriage should be allowed to exist. Prop 8 was struck down on the basis that the supporters of the proposition had no legal standing about which they could oppose, and Justice Kennedy, who is the presenter for the ban of DOMA and one of the Supreme Court justices, said that without the legality to have federal rights with taxes and 1,100 other issues that the federal government can preside over, it was like same-sex couples were living in second-tier marriages, and that goes against everything in the 14th Amendment and full equal protection clause. However, it is important to note that DOMA does not require any state to legalize gay marriage or recognize same-sex marriage from another state. It only states that no federal recognition was unconstitutional. In addition to major acts like DOMA and Prop 8, there also began to be major changes in lawsuits that worked in favor of legalizing same-sex marriage even further. The first was a case called U.S. versus Windsor, which was a case about the validity of marriage after a partner has died. Edie Windsor met Thea Spirer, and they lived in New York. New York at the time did not offer gay marriages, but they would accept them if they came from another state or another country. They'd be recognized. So Thea and Edie went to Canada and they got married. They were together for 30 years. When Thea died, Edie was, of course, named the beneficiary to all of her property, all of her will, everything, because they had been together for over 30 years. When Thea died, however, Edie was charged almost $300,000 in inheritance tax, as under federal tax law, a spouse can leave anything to their partner without any kind of taxes. However, in the federal government's eyes, Thea and Edie were not legally married, so Edie had to pay all of these taxes. So Edie argued this, of course, to the Supreme Court, and using DOMA as her main point, Windsor argued that that violated the equal protection principles of the U.S. Constitution because it recognized the existing marriages of the heterosexual couples, but not of same-sex couples, despite the fact that New York treats all marriages the same. On December 7, 2012, the Supreme Court heard the case and deemed DOMA unconstitutional, but they did not begin to discuss the issue of same-sex federal marriage recognition. The case Obergefell versus Hodges picked up directly from this Windsor victory. James Obergefell met John Arthur in 1992, and they fell in love. But sadly, Arthur had Lou Gehrig's disease. They knew that he wasn't going to live very long. So what they did was, from their own home state of Ohio, which does not recognize gay marriages, they rented a $12,000 medical plane with the help of their friends and family, and James and John flew down to Maryland and got married on the runway in the plane, and then flew back to Ohio. 3 months later, unfortunately, Lou Gehrig's disease took him, and John passed away. Knowing that John would not survive much past their wedding day, they filed to have James as the spouse on the death certificate, which a federal judge granted. The state of Ohio, however, fought back. Because of the precedent set with Windsor and versus the United States, this case made it to the Supreme Court, where, on June 26, 2015, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that the Constitution does, in fact, support the idea of gay marriage. And I accidentally said June 26, 2015, I meant 2013. So, excuse me. But through this case, and under Barack Obama, same-sex unions were legalized across America. For all under the LGBT spectrum and their allies, this is a day that none will ever forget. It's the day when gay people could marry whom they love and have it be recognized as just as valid of a union as a woman and a man in the eyes of the federal government. From 1991 until now, whopping changes have been implemented toward the march of gay marriage, some positive like Obergefell's and Windsor cases, and some not so positive like DOMA and Prop 8. However, gay marriage is legal now, and it gives the right to everyone to celebrate themselves and be in a federally recognized happy marriage with a man or woman or any gender person that they choose. And that is something that should be celebrated by all.